There's two things that I'm just not feeling about these two sneakers, the Nike Dunk Low Scraps. And there's, first of all, it says scrap right there in the title. I kind of get what they're going for, because these guys are a patchwork quilt of different materials and different sections and things like that. But when it comes to scrap, scrap really should be about recycled materials. And I look at these guys and I don't see a single recycled material on them. Every piece of this shoe is planned, and it's the way it's meant to be. It's designed, you can imagine it being on the design board, and they say, right, we're going to put a bit of leather here, a bit of mesh there, and we'll make the swoosh this way. And it's all planned, and I don't see it being from offcuts at all. Now, if I'm wrong about that, if there's really is a move to zero shoe with the Nike Move to Zero initiative, all about trying to get more recycled materials into their shoes and sustainability into their brand, I totally apologize. But when I look at these guys, all I see is just this patchwork shoe of different pieces of material, all sort of hooked in together, but they're there deliberately, and they're exactly as they were planned, and they came off the production line. They're not offcuts or anything like that. So that's sort of my first kind of thing with this shoe that I'm a bit sort of on. And then, well, it's actually not this shoe, it's these shoes, because there's two of them. Hopefully behind me here on the green screen you were looking at the thumbnail, which meshes together these two shoes, and one of them I can't pronounce. It's like the ARCHAEO Brown, and the other one's like sea glass or something like that. One very white and one very sort of brown and earthy feel, and those two shoes are the two Ds. And the other thing about them, and I know I shouldn't be negative right off the bat, I shouldn't like really pull a shoe down too hard, because obviously there'll be people out there that love these guys and that really value them, so I shouldn't really be too negative. But I can't help myself, because no, I don't see the scrap. But the other thing here is, I was talking in a recent video, I think it was about Air Force Ones, about how you earn the right to tweak with a shoe. The Air Force Ones themselves will celebrate their 40th anniversary year next year, 40 years of the same silhouette. Yeah, you can go ahead and tweak that a little bit if you want to. And it's the same with the Dunk line, which these guys are, these Nike Dunk Lows, is that you can tweak with it a little bit after, 36 years since since 1985, when Dunks first came out. And you earn the right to tweak with it, but the key word, the important word here is tweak, and tweak means just little changes. And it's what are they called now? Is it the Disrupt? The Dunk Low Disrupts. I think they're women's shoes, and that was a tweak in, but still, even that was a tweak a little too far. But these guys, there's just too much. There's too much removed from that original Dunk Low silhouette, and I think they've maybe taken it a little step too far. So they're not quite hitting the mark on the scrap side of things with the Move to Zero, and they're not quite hitting the mark on a sort of Dunk 2.0, or a rethinking or reimagining of the Dunk, as far as I'm concerned. But it's not going to stop me from going through these shoes and having a look at some of the important details on them, and maybe based on those details you'll either agree with me, or you'll be like, you know what, disagree with you there, this is an actual fire shoe. And I'm pretty sure the dunk heads out there are not going to be saying that, but that's just my take on these guys. So first things first, let's get to the drop date. August the 12th is when these are both scheduled to drop. And I did read on Sneaker News, my preferred source of information about sneakers, that there was an original scrap that dropped like from this line. Now there have been scraps that have dropped before, different lines actually. It's not just the Dunk Lows, but they look very, very different to this. But what I'm talking about is this silhouette in a previous colorway, but I'm pretty sure these are the first two colorways from this line, but that might just be me. So let's have a look at some of the details on there. The first thing to talk about is layers. It's all about different layers, different panels, different segments, different little features on the shoe, and the way that they sort of alter the kind of 2D line of the lateral side is altered with the way that they slide things and intersect things together. And the main place to be able to look at that, and the most important feature of that, in my opinion, is the way the swooshes bisect the ankle strap. Usually what you'd see on a Dunk Low is the ankle sort of support that comes from the ankle all the way down to the heel, wrap around the back, and then up on the other side to the ankle. That would be one solid piece of material, continuous, running through that left to right parts of the shoe. But as you can see on the green screen here, especially on the brown ones, I think they're the easy ones, the ARCHAEO Browns, they're the easier ones to see how the swoosh actually cuts through that ankle. And that's what I mean about the layering effect on this shoe, that they're altering the way the standard layers appear on a dunk low, and that swoosh bisecting the ankle strap is a really good place to see that. But then we've also got more layering going on, and some of it's a bit redundant. Here's a panel, here's a little bit on top of the panel for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than design. And the places where we see those kind of things is up on the eyelets. If you look around the lacing system, you can see there's a couple of little panels of material that have just been popped on top of the lacing system and don't appear to have any function. And then if you come down from that to the quarter line, there's a lot going on in there, little things sort of bumping up out of the midsole onto the quarter line, and some paneling going on there. And then you run forward from that, and what is usually a sort of clear straight piece of fabric that wraps around the front of the shoe on the toe box has also been interrupted, and you can see there's a stitching sort of line that borders between two different bits of fabric right in the middle of that toe box. And again, it's the kind of detail and the kind of change that represents this layering, but it might be a little bit too much. And then it's not too far to go from that into the actual panel of the toe box, and I originally thought that toe boxes were leather in contrast to the midfoot. Here's the midfoot behind that swoosh, and you can see very mesh, and hopefully on the picture behind me here you can see that midfoot in mesh, but then up towards the ankle you see the mesh continued in a different colorway, and I thought that it was contrasting with a fully solid leather toe box panel. But then when we have a look at the toe box panel from above, you'll be able to see that it's actually two different materials, leather on one side and then mesh on the other. So again, they're really playing with that kind of core structure of this dunk low silhouette. And then back from that we'll go running up the lacing system, and we get into a point here where I think dunk heads are going to start to really be uncomfortable. Everything so far I think people can maybe handle, playing around with the swooshes a bit, adding a kind of little bit of fabric here or there, but when it comes to branding, especially signature branding on tongues and heels, maybe not best to play with that one, Nike, but they've gone and done it in both places. So first place to have a look at is at the top of the tongues, and what you'll see is instead of having a flat two-dimensional piece of branding up there, what they've done is it's almost like a pull tab that you'd have, you know, on the heel, so you can pull the shoes on if they're a little bit snug, but instead it's on the tongue, and I don't know why, because you don't really need a pull tab on the tongue because the tongue's designed to be pulled anyway, but there you can see it's sort of like a little extra bit of fabric that bridges off of the tongue and has the Nike branding on there. And this is probably the place that is going too far for those dunk heads out there, is that they're not going to be interested in seeing these kind of changes to their beautiful trusted shoes. And it's the same on the heel. One of the greatest little sort of inaccuracies, that's a good word for it, in sneaker folklore is the heel branding on dunk sneakers, especially when you see the Nike branding is too big for the branding panel and the E is always kind of hunched over on the side. But to get over that little imperfection, what they've done is they've shrunk down the Nike branding and the font size to make it smaller so it fits in that branding panel better. People aren't going to like it, even though it fits more neatly and it doesn't have that imbalance at the end in the E there. That's what people like about the dunks. They don't want to see the perfection. They don't want to see a shoe that's absolutely perfectly, like, robotically constructed compared to what its design detail is. Here's the actual shoe. Having those imperfections in there, I think, is an important part of the dunk sort of folklore and history. And I think this is probably going to be something on the shoe that people are going to be a bit like, you know what, little detail too much for me. And then the last thing to have a look at, I think, is on both shoes, sporting a gum sole, which is generally speaking appreciated by the sneaker people out there. And I was looking at these gum soles kind of closely, trying to work it out, and I've gone with a decision. I've decided to call it that they are the super semiest translucent gum soles that you'll ever see, and it's like a hint of translucence, a barely perceptible hint of translucence on there, whereas a gum sole, a full gum sole, wouldn't have any kind of translucence at all. It's got that hint in there on both shoes, and it's a great way to finish off the shoes. A really neat design touch. It really works best on the ARCHAEO brown pair because the gum sole fits in with those earthy tones that we were talking about, whereas the sea glass pair maybe doesn't fit in so well, and they could have gone with something like icy blue down there instead. But still, gum soles generally well appreciated and well accepted. across many people's sort of in the sneaker world. So yay, a good place to finish with a plus on there. So that's my take on it. And I know usually these videos, it's not the way to do it. People want to hear you talk up a shoe, not talk down a shoe. But every so often a shoe comes along and I just find it really, really hard to be positive about it. And you just call it how it is. And at least if nothing else, it gives you guys that sense of appreciation that I call it straight and say what I think instead of say what maybe the brands want me to say, for example. So that's my take on these two shoes, the Sea Glass and the ARCHAEO Brown, upcoming releases from the Nike Dunk Low Scrap line. Hopefully you appreciated my take on that, and if you have a different take on that, you'll share it with us all down in the comments down below. But for now, it's time just to wrap this one up, finish up another video for another day, and I'll say the same thing that I say at the end of every single video, which is that I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.